Hello viewers, welcome to another glamorous edition on God's Eye, where we would be bringing to you latest happenings in the Russian-Ukraine war. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell for latest updates. Putin is fighting an impossible war, and there is no escape. Like Germany in the 1930s, Russia is enslaved to the myth of military invincibility. Why do nations start an impossible war? This issue is due to President Putin's invasion of Ukraine, but it points to a great European tragedy that spans over a century. The most obvious is lack of intelligence. What military disasters have in common? Governments do not start wars they think they have lost. The Russian leadership's belief that a relatively small invading force could take control of Ukraine within days and hold a hostile and supported population from the outside could be traced to intelligence services, military headquarters, or perhaps Putin himself somewhere. This is proof that a big mistake was made. And how could a state agency made up of experienced, ruthless and intelligent people make such a grave mistake that is devastating to its victims and itself likewise? How could the German government in 1914 think that it could break the alliance with France, Russia, and possibly Britain? How did Hitler in 1939 think he could conquer Europe? Twice the German victory seemed excruciatingly close to the defeated and occupied powers, and to Britain. But in fact, his act of aggression was almost inevitable from the start. Germany, like Russia today, was too weak in terms of population, resources and economic opportunities. But I almost won, you might answer. But whether the Kaiser's forces won his Battle of the Marne in August 1914, Britain demanded peace terms in May 1940, or Putin's assault forces captured Kiev last February. But what happens then? How could they think that victory would not be temporary? Can you imagine? How could you not have foreseen an unsolvable long-term problem? There have been several explanations that seem to shed light on the Ukrainian catastrophe. First, a general unwilling or unable to admit to his master that he fears defeat. For both Germany and Putin's Russia, the myth of military invincibility made matters worse. Generals can warn of obstacles, and they certainly did in Germany from before 1914 to the late 1930s. Perhaps some of Putin's generals warned him too. But with their jobs, prestige, and budgets, you need to reassure hosts that you have a plan. The German army's Schlieffen Plan of 1914 and he was Operation Yellow of 1940. The generals and politicians were convinced that these were bold and brilliant decisions that secured a quick victory and averted the long war they had rightfully expected to lose. Necessarily focused on the short term and obscured its meaning. The Russian attack on Kiev showed the same recklessness, but without skill. For such risks to appear reasonable, there must be some ideological basis. A common element was short-term fatalism and long-term fantasy. Fatalism, the belief that war is inevitable and that time is running out. In 1914 and 1939, German leaders believed that the country was surrounded by enemies and was becoming insecure. War was therefore inevitable and had to come at once. Such thinking invalidates the objection to war as a policy. Aggressors declare themselves victims, and anyone advocating moderate policies is dismissed as a coward or a traitor. In both cases, and apparently in Putin's case, long-term fantasy is also a form of racial nationalism, pushed by the Nazis to the most extreme limits imaginable, whose goal is not only conquest but genocide. A great victory therefore means the victory of the Teutons over the Slavs in 1914. Or master race in the 1939 struggle for world domination. Or Greater Russia in 2022. Such fantasies underestimate the enemy, close off long-term discussions, and render practical gains irrelevant. Why bother with trade relations and future political systems when the goal is to change the world? War has always been a major source of political turmoil. Like the fall of England in 1919, even victory comes at a cost. Defeat demands much harsher punishments. Severity depends on social and national cohesion, which was not the case in Russia in 1970.